Call the special select board meeting of December 17th to order. It's our final one of the decade, I believe. So, first item is approval of the agenda.
Moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes?
I think we have an addition, don't we?
We have an addition?
We have an addition of item 15A, the Lister's Error and Omissions Report.
Right?
And also to note, we have a need for an executive session this evening.
Okay, so, all in favor of approving the agenda with two additions, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next is approval of the minutes of last week's select board meeting, of
Move.
November 19th,
I'll move that.
December 19th.
Second.
Lindsay moved
Seconded.
it first.
All in favor, whoop. No, yeah, December 10th. I'm sorry, there was a typo in there. I was trying to remember what date that was. December 10th meeting minutes.
Yes.
Okay, recommended changes to December 10th.
It says 10th on mine.
I'm
Right,
sorry?
no, it's what he said verbally, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but he meant December 10th, yes. No, they were remarkable minutes again, you know, because we had such robust discussion that night. I'm really impressed with the way everything was captured. So for anybody watching tonight to catch up, definitely look at those minutes. They're very comprehensive.
Okay, hearing no recommended changes, all in favor of approving the minutes as drafted, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone here for something that is not on the agenda? All right. Next, Leslie, are you here? There you are. If you could come forward. Leslie's going to present a request.
Leslie Kameny, Middlebury Tree Committee, and here to answer any questions you might have about a proposal we'd like to make for a communities caring for canopy grant given by the Vermont Urban and Community Forestry Program. Do you want me to describe it, or?
Please.
So one of the things that we're working on is to help the town maintain the maintenance of the trees planted already. The trees are a big investment every time we plant one. So what this grant is asking for $3,000 to hire someone to assess a section of the town, and we're planning on creating 4 to 5 sections of the town, and to systematically review the town, these sections, for the health and need for pruning of the street trees.
Okay, are there any questions on that? You'll notice that the in-kind donation will be town staff and community volunteer time, so it's not money out of our budget.
And we have had several Caring for Canopy grants in the past. This is not the first.
Good point.
I'll move that we authorize the tree committee to submit the Caring for Canopy grant seeking $3,000.
Second.
It's a $6,000 grant,
Plus the
$3,000
Plus the
in
3,000
Yeah,
local
I'm
in-kind
sorry.
match, you know, to fund the pruning assessment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is something that we've been grappling with for a couple months now. And it's the discussion of the Encore Renewables Energy proposed 5 megawatt solar project off of South Street Extension. And that's in collaboration with Middlebury College and Green Mountain Power. We've heard the presentation of the project. And then we asked it to go to the planning commission reviewed it after a couple of meetings. They came back with some recommendations, but unanimously recommended approval of it. We had roughly 90 minutes of testimony at last week's select board meeting, and then I think everybody has been engaged in dialogue throughout the week. We've had a number of letters received. They're in our packet. And as everybody knows, this is not an easy decision. It impacts a lot of people both ways. We have talked with the college about this, and we invited the college to make a statement as far as where they stand on it after all this dialogue, and what their commitments are with the project. And I believe David's here to make that comment, and I would welcome you forward, David.
Good evening. I'm David Provo. I'm the Executive Vice President of Finance and Administration here at the college. President Patton would have liked to have been here. She's in Boston tonight, but I am prepared to share with you her comments and commitment. We've been working hard the last couple days in a number of meetings to better understand the objections and concerns of this project, be clear on our position around our commitment of the conditions that have been set by the Planning Commission, and I want to talk about those tonight. As you're aware and has been previously testified to, this is an important project to the college in its efforts to go beyond carbon neutrality and find 100% renewable solutions for both our electrical and thermal solutions. We see our role as a leader in this space, and the need to find locally sourced renewable solutions is a critical component of what President Patton and the board have committed to. With that said, we appreciate the public comments and the concerns of our faculty, our staff, the townspeople who are most impacted, and have really been focused on addressing those concerns. So I'm here before you tonight asking for your support. Understanding that the college has no issues with the conditions that the Planning Commission has set forth to you. We have submitted a formal in writing from President Patton, myself, and the Encore team committing to those conditions, and be glad to answer any questions about those. It really is about, from an aesthetic standpoint, the commitment around softening the view shed and the project site. We are fully committed to that. We are working with Encore about additional financial resources from the college to help support and beef that up. We are committed to addressing the other issues that were raised around pollinators, around a public trail around the site. And we were clear in our letter, we need to make sure we've got some T's to cross and I's to dot, but we do not see any issues around those pieces. We've made a commitment that we will continue to work with Green Mountain Power on a storage solution that could further support Porter, and are committed to finding a battery storage solution. So on the peak hours, capturing that power and being able to provide that in emergency situations through a microgrid. And we're committed to a long-term strategy and working with the town and working with the community on a renewable commitment for the entire town. Had good discussions with a number of groups over the last few days about what that might look like, and we would like to come back in January to jumpstart a discussion about how we could facilitate and work with the town in identifying not just our solutions, but using identifying lands that the college currently controls to provide as a solution to renewable energy sources. And Lori is fairly, absolutely committed to getting that work done while she's here in Middlebury. That would last for generations. The other component related to that is really a question about how we use our lands. And it's not just about renewable energies, it's about food sources, it's about multiple items that she would like that process, the town process, to work with the college to identify these lands that the college has acquired over the years, but maybe those purposes that why we acquired them 30, 40, 50 years ago may no longer be the reasons to maintain them, and there could be better uses of those. I want to share Lori's comments to you all. Middlebury knows and understands its history as the town's college and regards that as part of the sacred relationship that makes us both better. As we think about our next steps and our educational obligation to the next generation to fight climate change, we want to do so with the town of Middlebury to address its own energy needs. We want to create partnerships that will focus on land and use conservation, best practices in energy consumption and renewability. Middlebury College can only deepen its educational mission by learning from the town about what forms of climate action could be most effective in our community. Doing that work together creates a more welcoming world. I'm deeply grateful of the town and Middlebury's consideration.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Are there any questions of David while he's here? Okay. Victor?
Well, I guess just one question. Everything you said is fine. I have, and it's gratifying. I just wonder why it wouldn't be possible to postpone this development so that it could be brought under this. I think what appears to be, and I'm very heartened by the president's statements and her intention and the college's intention in future to develop a comprehensive town college energy plan. This is very important. We understand the crisis that we're facing. But I think it would be much better if you simply postponed this project until that one is done. It's not as though in other words, I don't see that it's that critical.
Yep, so good question. We had that discussion specifically. What are the risks of postponing it and allowing a deep dive public process to take place to develop a long-term 3, 4, 5 decade plan around an energy strategy for the entire community? We did not conclude that by stopping this project and waiting till all that work was complete, that we would be meeting and addressing our needs, which we think is a greater crisis. We've heard from our students that they believe this is a generational crisis that our generation has put upon them, and that their request to us and around the spirit of Energy 2028 was, what are we, our generation, going to do to help their generation address a problem that we are passing on to them. That's about reducing our consumption of energy. We consume a lot of energy, so we're working with groups to identify that, including consideration of a carbon tax internally on our air travel. We are looking to source our energies. We will fall out of compliance of carbon neutrality in the 2023 timeframe as the credits from the Breadloaf Forest expire. And we believe we don't have a lot of time to address the pressing needs around finding these solutions. We are very interested in addressing the concerns about this specific site. We do maintain that it is a good site for us to do this work on. we can address the aesthetics with screening, we can address the concerns that people have raised and invite folks to the table to help us as we figure that out. But we did not conclude that we're not in a issue of we need to move forward. And that's not to say we don't support a process. We want that to be a robust process, but President has concerns about delaying, given the work that's been done and the investment that's been made to date.
Any other questions of David? Okay, with that, I'll turn it inward, and I'd like to have select board debate. I think we've got a lot of information. Not sure where the board sits. Thoughts?
I heard David mention the hospital, the planning commission, contingency, the Green Mountain Power battery pack, and all those things. I don't think you mentioned much about the concern of the people who are objecting to this as a view shed. You haven't talked much about that. And when you say that, I'm losing my thought now. You say you will do better screening, but I think that should happen first as a plan before it could come to us for approval. If we approve now as is, and there is no standard of how much screening you're going to do afterwards.
It came late, so you probably didn't read it, Farhad, but there is a new screening plan that was provided to us.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. Is that the plan you're talking about? Yes. The screening? Okay.
Laura?
I honor all the rigorous discussion we've had on the project. I think it's really informed us. It's really educated us. I think people agree on the climate peril that we're in. I really wrestle with it, and yet I do support the project. I continue to support the project. I think the economics of the project actually are important to consider, and I believe that we need to do both have an energy plan that we work toward as a town that's enhanced. I mean, we've been working on it since I came to Select Board, and even before that. You know, I mean, that's what brought me to Select Board, really was a motivation to rapidly reduce our carbon footprint, rapidly. You know, so I believe we need this project and everything that we've been saying that we need, you know, in terms of decreasing our demand and looking for additional sites that are appropriate. So I just want to say that I think it's important to proceed with the project, and I'm encouraged that the college supports the conditions of the Planning Commission, and I am hoping that they will also consider some of the other comments we heard last week about incorporating some creativity around this in terms of art and education that I think are a special opportunity of the college as well. So that's how I feel.
Okay.
I'm also in support of the project. I appreciate the concessions that the college has made to help mitigate some of those concerns. I think we're in a crisis, and I think the solutions that we're looking for are not going to come easy. I think we're going to have to compromise on a lot of things. That said, I hope going forward the college has heard our community, and I hope Encore has heard our community and takes those considerations into the future as more projects are planned. But at the end of the day, I think we have a crisis, and I think we all have to do our part to solve it, and I think the college has put together a very solid project that will cut into a significant portion of what our community, of how our community contributes to the problem. So I'm in support of it.
So I don't think I can say much more than what Lindsay or Laura has already said. I will also support the project, although it was definitely a lot of consideration and appreciate all of the voices that we got, emails we got. I do think as a town and as a select board, we have some work to do to further our own energy plan and siting. Have concerns about the economics of these projects and how that often means we take some of our best land to do these projects. But I don't think that's a reason for, in this case, not supporting it. So I do appreciate the comments tonight with the college's willingness to maybe help us in that direction, because they've obviously had some conversations that we need to be having, and I would appreciate their support and want to encourage our energy committee to continue working on the plans that they've started, and hope to continue making that better so we aren't maybe in this situation every time.
Yeah, thanks. I was actually going through the many notes I was writing last week, and I was sitting there thinking, I've been on this board now for a decade, and there are things that come along that are very difficult decisions either way. But this one has been a special irritant, and I was trying to think of why that is. And I realize it's because being asked to make a decision without feeling like I have all the details and the facts. I mean, my problem is I'm a professional engineer, so when I do things, I take it from the engineering approach of good and bad, and I do want to see the good and the bad. And I feel like I didn't get a lot of the answers, and this is not just uniquely to this, but is really how we're going for the renewable energy in general in the state. We know it's a crisis. We know we have to address it. I still sit there and I raise the question once again, is with if that 5 megawatt field was out there today, how much power did it really generate? Well, the reality is it generated next to nothing. Meanwhile, I look at what we can do well in renewable. I was looking at some of Green Mountain Power's data, and the Middlebury Lower hydro plant, which is by the pulp mill, is generating about 2.3 megawatts reliably, day in, day out. The Belden, a little further, is 5.9, day in and day out. So where does the power come from when the solar can't generate here? Well, I've actually talked to people in energy business, and what I've heard from more than one of them is the secret of solar success in Vermont is because we've got a really big hydro facility across the border and Seabrook Nuclear. Those are always generating power. And yet we do have to look at ways to source it. So that's what's really so frustrating about this. I want to be overly enthusiastic about it, but I can't be. And so I'm being asked to make a decision without the facts. I would like to suggest that as other renewables are being looked at in Middlebury, that we move away. I'm hearing siting. That tells me more solar. And I think Heather was going that direction, if I may, last week with one of the questions was, how much solar would it take to power the town? And the way I kind of interpreted that question was, how many of these things are we going to be looking at out there? And with what is arguably not a terribly reliable power source here. Certainly not what the river is, and certainly not with that bioenergy plant that we recently approved up on Exchange Street. So I think that's a really good question as we look at energy plan, is how much of this really is worth having in our climate. So I don't like having to vote on something without the facts. I do recognize, however, that this plan, this site, it does comply with the town plan. And the town planning commission agreed 6-0 that this did that. So I'm reluctant to go against that. Long short of it is, I'm about ready to make a decision on this one. But I think whatever, it should go to the reviewing committee, the fact that this was not as well presented as it should have been. Certainly there's one board member who was very irritated with the way it went. And that should be in part of the notes and the minutes that go to them, so that in the future, this is done better, and we look holistically at what all the best energy options are to achieve this very critical carbon reduction goal that we're after. So that's about all I have to say on this one right now, but it has been a very interesting effort. I certainly have learned a lot more about energy in this last couple of years than I ever did in my profession, but which has been good. See where it shakes out.
I'm going to just speak briefly about the challenge that we've had on reconciling this, and part of it is that we have not defined clearly in the town plan the guidelines of placement of really any of these sites, and I think it's improper to malign the college over the best intentions in trying to work through the staffing process, and it was an inclusive process, and it's been known from many in the community that they were working towards this end. When it became aware at the college senior leadership level that what those concerns were, they were very quick to make a commitment to spend extra money to ensure that the project had better, more robust screening. I've driven out South Street. When we moved back, my wife and I lived on South Street, and I too availed myself of that beautiful run and walk all the time. Actually, we used to run it when I was younger. And for me, the $1 million view was to the east and more to the south. And you know, thank God this does not sit in that. And I almost stuck my car out in the middle of the field because I wanted to see it from so many different perspectives. And I tried it at different times of day. I think that the project it's tough to look at a project of this size, I get it. But I have a hard time condemning the project. I think that the project is well-intentioned, it's well-planned, and can be made to work. And I know that the college has been a very good partner for us as a community, and we'll put whatever extra money is needed towards that project to ensure appropriate screening. At the same time, in discussion with the college, we talked about how do you prevent this in the future, and how do we get ahead of the curve, because we've had a goal at the select board level to have a more robust plan and actually anticipate in some of these activities and look at, like what the professors had volunteered to do last week, is you know, to engage the community at large and have use some of the bright young minds at the college to study it, and like we've done with other projects. They helped us with the rail siding, and so I think it behooves us to take advantage of the offer and make that one of our priorities for the year ahead, to get that project well underway with one of our committees, working with the college's resources to establish a plan that is more directive in nature than what we currently have. So that's where I stand on it. I find it to be a project that so many of our community members day in, day out say we need these renewable sources, and we're not going to make a dent in it with, you know, I've spent a lot of money on rooftop, and it generates power from my house, but you're not going to power a college or a university with just rooftop. You need these large sites. Unfortunately for us as a community, we have a college, but fortunate for us, we have a college. It brings so much to us, and so I think in being a partner with the college, that I find myself wanting to, and supporting it. But that's because they're a partner with us and they've made that commitment. So the biggest pushback has been the view shed, and that can be solved and will not be a blight on the properties out there.
So, do we need to make some kind of motion or support?
Hi.
I'm sorry.
I would just like to say something.
Yes.
Sorry, Laura. I think it's important, first of all, I think we all recognize, and I hope we do, that rule one, we recognize the severity of the crisis. It's as though nature, which is our physician, has given our species, as it were, a diagnosis of having a terminal illness, and I suspect that's true. Our use of, our overuse of power. And there's no question that we need to move together and do our best to deal with this in obviously not a way that we can cure it, but at least minimize the suffering, and I think that's very important. However, I still come back to this particular project, and what concerns me is that it was not arrived at in a way I believe that should have involved the entire community from the very beginning. The town, the college, you know, we are one community, and I think coming out of this discussion, and this is, of course, I'm very hopeful, will be a plan that's ours, not just the colleges, not just the towns. But until we do that, or until we have that machinery in place, and it doesn't take long, I'm not talking about years and so on, then I think we can look at this project and assess it in a way that it should have been done in the beginning. And therefore, I am not ready to give my approval to this project. To a certain extent, I suppose you could say that, the college has done its due diligence with regard, finally, it went to the Planning Commission. It probably should have gone to the Planning Commission right away, I might say, at our request. And I'm happy to see that their willingness to meet the Planning Commission's conditions. And still, I think it would be better for us all if we would simply draw back and get our committees in place that are really essentially town college committees, and then proceed.
I think we're always going to be faced with this tension of having to make the decision and feeling like there should be more research done and having to make the decision. And I think that a lot of research has been done and a lot of energy planning has been done. I'm talking more broadly, you know, since I've served on the Energy Committee before I came on to Select Board, and I know we've had a lot of discussion about solar siting, and I know the college attempted to identify some prime sites in Middlebury that could be appropriate for solar, not of this scale necessarily, but, you know, I mean, and in terms of which renewable source is more reliable than another. We know that we need a mixture of many different solar sources. And I don't know, Nick, that solar is that unreliable, especially as the panels are becoming more sophisticated. And I don't know if Encore could speak to that, because I think that would be important to the discussion. And still, I think we're going to, like I said, we're going to need it all. We're going to need the blend of all of it, including a rigorous commitment to reducing our demand in the first place, which I know the college is committed to also, and we as a town also need to be committed to that. So I just wanted to say that too. And I'm prepared to move a motion if we feel like we're complete with our discussion.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, having heard the input of many parties in reference to the Middlebury College solar site plan presented by Encore Renewable Energy at our last meeting on December 10th, and having received the Planning Commission's December 5th statement of conditional support for the South Street Solar Project, and having gained the college and Encore's commitment to the mitigation factors outlined by the Planning Commission, as well as other workable ideas as they continue to develop the plan, I move to support the proposed 5 megawatt solar installation.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
5-2. Okay.
I'd also look forward to the opportunity for the town, with the support of the college, to develop a long-term energy vision for our community and draft actionable plans. And I move that this be a priority for next year's activities.
I have a comment to make on that.
Is that a motion, Laura?
That's a motion.
Are you taking comments on that?
What's that?
It's a motion, and then we will take comments on it.
I need a motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes?
All right, brief comment. Sorry, my heart is pounding out of my chest because I don't want to interfere with your process. But as a town planner, I think I just need to, I'm not sure what information you got from people last meeting about what the town plan would or would not have done for you if it had or had not looked different. But there's an enhanced energy plan that you can create to enhance the energy section of your town plan. There's your town plan, which could include a view shed map, which the Conservation Commission has been sort of marching toward. And then there is the Energy Committee that's creating an energy strategy that contains different energy goals. And those are all different plans. And I think it's really important, if you're thinking of forming a new committee, I think it's just really important to liaise with the
Let me
existing.
just-
No.
Okay.
Get your heart stop beating.
Yeah, I just don't want you to
This-
think that,
This is telling us as a select board a commitment to work with you in our committees. I don't think we need to create a new committee. We have
Yeah.
plenty of committees.
Yeah.
To make it a priority to flush these plans out. And you'll
Okay.
be a lead, you'll be one of the key people we come to.
okay, good. And we can definitely,
You've gained our confidence.
can
You've done a
conceive-
great job with this master plan.
we can provide
so-
you with plenty of tools to help you figure out what views are important in the town, but you may not end up with a map that tells you solar can go here, but not there. You know, it might not be that black and white.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, good.
And I think part of our understanding is this, it isn't black and white, so. Did we have a second on that?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Are there any other comments on that? Okay, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. I'll be talking with you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I'd like to add as a technical person, and knowing that this is a crisis, but I look at what's being done, just look where my own daughter goes to school, and I see this absolute brilliance of all these different material sciences and electrical routing technologies and battery development and all that. But what they do come into is a lot of, they have the chance to constantly be avoiding wild enthusiasm and being very objective. And so in the educational aspect, and I trust the professors, or I know they're good at the college, will not be afraid to challenge some thoughts, you know, and to make sure that what we have ultimately is a quality, objective program. And I was thinking of just one example of where the college helped tremendously, and I think this would be obviously a lot bigger, but a great help was when we were in the process of identifying where to put the fire stations for the upgrades that happened a few years ago, back now. And the college assisted us with a response time analysis so that we found that ultimately they were put where they belonged, and it gave us confidence before we moved on with the investment. I think that sort of same philosophy would be quite appropriate on the energy, and look forward to being partners, and of course Jen, who is our lead planner, to make sure that we come up with a good comprehensive solution that makes it better for all of us. And in fact, I'd like to say we could be a leader in rural areas, small town and rural areas, to do this really well. That's even the bigger goal of what we can do.
Okay, we have a full agenda to talk about our draft budget. We thank everybody for coming, and you know, appreciate everybody's input. And
you're welcome to stay and talk about the budget.
so with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathleen, to walk us through the budget.
So I'll just start with an overview of the budget, which you have in your packet, both in detail, line item detail, and in summary form. Looking here at the revenue summary, see that our budget's about up $359,000, which is about 3.2%. But due to some increase in revenues, a proposal to increase the amount of the local option tax cross-street bridge fund to offset one-time capital improvement expenses, the property tax needed is up $129,597, which would translate into about a 1.36 cent increase in the budget, assuming no growth in the grand list. So that as our overview.
Question for you, is
Yep.
that with the grand list after we approve the errors and omissions?
That's right. So that's the estimated for next year. I conservatively estimated a flat grand list, not knowing what appeals we might face this year in the grand list. Okay. So that is conservative. Typically, we see about a 1% increase. If there was a 1% increase in the grand list, that tax rate increase would look more like 0.3 cents, so 0.3 of 1 cent.
Okay.
So that was quick, but we have department heads here, and I'll start off with a very brief overview of the general fund revenue, starting on the first page of your budget printout. Not a lot of change until we get down to state and local government funding. We've seen our trend over year over year that we can anticipate higher revenues for state highway aid, current use, $15,000 increase, state payment in lieu of taxes, a $3,000 increase, and federal payment in lieu of taxes, a $500 increase. So total intergovernmental revenue of from state and federal sources, an increase of $23,000. Of course, we always keep a careful eye on the state budget to see if they're going to have any reductions or increases there. January is early in the legislative season, so it would be difficult to know how they're going to end up. Anticipating a 3% increase in the water and sewer administrative charges. Those charges are for basically personnel that are accounted for in the general fund, doing administrative tasks for the water and sewer fund. Since our wages are going up, our health insurance benefits are going up, I think a 3% minimum increase for those funds is appropriate. School resource officer, 80%, that's line item 46. The schools pay 80% of our wages and benefits for the school resource officer.
I'm sorry, where are you, Kath? Okay, no,
I'm on
I found it.
46.
Okay.
Okay. And the line item detail that you see on the screen is also in your packet. My cheat sheet of what is driving these increases. So if you want to go back to that after for the review. And it is, again, it's right in your packet.
Yep.
Good news from the town clerk's department. There's been a substantial increase in town clerk recording fees, which are set by the state. So she's projecting a $15,000 increase in recording fees. Then popping down to line item 151, miscellaneous revenue, including interest earned on investment. Anticipating a $20,000 increase from $60,000 to $80,000. We'll be keeping a close eye on that to see where interest rates are going before we finalize the budget. Gifts in lieu of taxes. This is the Middlebury College payment in lieu of taxes. That's based in part on the performance of their investments, estimating a $10,000 increase from $280,000 to $295,000. You'll see that on line 160, the Middlebury College gift for the town office and recreation center is decreasing slightly. It decreases slightly each year with the decrease in the bond payment. Okay, so that's it from a very high-level review of revenue that you won't be hearing from other departments tonight.
I'm trying to think whether we actually implemented it or if we just discussed it. But we talked about charging for some of the services that we were doing, overseeing bonds and different things like that.
Right, for different grants.
The grant
Right.
management fee and
Right.
did we institute that last year?
So we talked about that, and as grant applications come in from different nonprofits,
Okay.
we'll include that in our recommendation to the board.
Okay. So are we ready for chief then?
I'll just really briefly touch on the administrative
Dana's there.
fixed charges and other expenses starting on line item 184 of the detailed budget. The one highlight is planning and zoning budget includes on line item 215 grant match for the hazard mitigation grant, which we've received. Municipal planning grant, which we have received, and a $2,000 watershed protection stormwater planning grant pending a successful application. So that was line item 215. Malt, which will be coming to your meeting, the Middlebury Area Land Trust, who will be coming to your meeting on January 14th to request a budget increase from $5,400 to $7,000 on line item 239. And then finally, big increase in elections from $5,000 to $11,000 due to the national election coming up.
Are you aware of other agencies that are appealing for funds, new funds, Kathleen?
I have not heard from other funds, from other agencies. Just to note that CVOEO and Rutland NeighborWorks missed the petition deadline last year,
Yep.
so they may resubmit.
They are working on it, I know that, and so is the Turning Point Center of Addison County. And there could be others out there, but I know at least of those.
And then I'll just touch briefly on fixed charges. Back towards the back of your budget, line item 1047, under debt service, probably page 27.
1047.
So the debt service, as the bonds mature, the debt service goes down, the interest goes down each year, as reflected in the debt retirement budget. Employee benefits. We were anticipating, when I spoke to you back in August, a major jump in health insurance. And while we did sustain a 15% jump in health insurance premiums, happy to report it's not going to translate to a 16% increase in our medical insurance budget, as town employees saw the impact that this was having on our budget, and willingly and supportively changed carriers. So instead of a 23% increase, we have a 16% increase in health insurance. And we also had several changes in enrollment, so that offset the huge premium increase. Unfortunately, as I told you back in August, we are having a very large increase in our workers' compensation premium due to our poor claims history and the inflation in wages. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Dana, unless you have any questions.
Did they come and do an audit and give us any suggestions on ways to mitigate potential workers' comp exposure?
Yes, we regularly have the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Property and Casualty Intermunicipal Fund safety staff here,
Yeah.
and they focus on one department a year, usually.
Okay.
So line item 340.
Yes. I don't know what page that is for you, but starts at 340.
Page 9.
Okay, so hopefully this will be short because the budget for the libraries this year is very similar to last year's budget. The major drivers are our personnel and facilities. Definitely the biggest increase is in compensation. Those are line items 340, 341, and 342. Altogether, that's going up 22,000. 4,000 of that is for one of our staff members, Stephanie, to go back up to 40 hours a week. She went down to 35 hours 2 years ago for personal reasons which have resolved. So we're moving her back to 40. And the other $18,000 of compensation increase is cost of living and step increases and a minimum wage increase that's coming up next year. Most of the other changes are just shuffling funds around between budget lines, so I won't spend a ton of time on that since there's no real increases or decreases. Our telephone costs did go down $1,500 because we switched over to the town's plan a year and a half ago. I moved some of that savings over to our conference and workshop fee budget line. It's 362, and our travel expenses. It also looks like we have an increase of $1,000 for our capital outlay. That's 366, but that's being offset by a reduction in our information and technology capital budget line. And that's because our costs on software are going up, and our costs on technology hardware are decreasing. So I expect there'll be some movement between the capital outlay line in our operating budget and our information technology line in our capital budget year to year as we have different software costs. All of the movement between the books and materials budget lines offset each other. I can answer questions if anyone has them. I guess the big trend is that we continue to spend more money on digital materials, which is really great because they take up no space on our shelves. They can't be lost. They don't incur fines or fees, and you can access them from anywhere. So that's really nice. And then, let's see, towards the end, budget line 426, building repairs, that increased by $1,000 to be more in line with what we spent the past 2 years. Our revenue budget is exactly the same. Questions? Yes.
Laura?
We love our library, and your staff is doing an awesome job, So could you review your hours and if you're anticipating any change of hours and if that would have any impact on
The
things?
library's hours that were open, you mean?
Yes.
I don't anticipate changing those right now. Have you noticed a need? I know we used to do Sunday hours before I got here,
Right.
and those were deemed to not, we weren't getting enough people actually coming in on those hours to keep them open. Were you thinking of something else?
Can you review what the hours are?
Oh, yes. Monday through Thursday, it's 9 to 7 p.m. Friday, it's 9 to 5, and Saturday, it is 9 to 4. And East Middlebury's library, Sarah Partridge, is open Tuesdays, 9 to noon, Thursdays, noon to 4, and Saturday mornings.
Yeah, 9 to
Yeah, 11 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are people still learning that you're open as early as 9 o'clock? Because I think people,
We are busy at 9 o'clock, I can
Mhm.
tell you that. Yeah, we have people lined up outside.
I know you do.
But we
But,
could do more to get the word out.
I'm not sure about that, but I know that at the other end of the day, where there's a need from like 5 to 9 o'clock, I'm just looking at that end, whether we are expanding any hours at that end.
I haven't been looking at it. I certainly can. We need to have a minimum of 3 people in the building to keep it open.
Mhm.
So that's just something to bear in mind in terms of the cost of keeping the building open later.
Yep.
But we can look into it.
You're open until 7 o'clock
Yeah.
on most nights, you said?
Monday through Thursday.
Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it slows down after 6. Definitely people are still in there, but it slows down.
Okay. And so with the closure, is there any planning for how people can drop off their books if they can't access the library?
The closure.
The road closure, the bridge closure.
Oh, the bridge
closed. The next
closed.
year.
Oh. We talked very briefly about exploring an option for a book drop elsewhere, off premise. I haven't looked into it too much more. I think what was the idea you had? The police station? I can't remember now where it was, but we don't have a plan in place for that yet.
I thought it was the
But-
fire station.
but maybe
yeah.
it was the
I
fire
see Chief Shaw raising his hand.
In fact, they actually have these trucks with these big compartments, which put a slot in one of them.
Not that it would be a big budget driver, but I didn't know if it was just something that you've been discussing as you're planning your budget for next year. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I will say that we met with Dana just to talk about future plans, and she wanted to bounce her ideas off and just see where we're headed as a board. And one thing that came up is they continue to expand their services, and now they have ski passes that you can check out for the winner up at the bowl, so,
And Reichert Nordic
And
Center.
Reichert.
So,
so,
yeah.
They also have a pass, I think, for Taylor Rental. for-
Yes, that's
for
new.
rental Stuff.
Yeah.
And there's also a pass for the Makery
Mm-hmm.
space for Hannaford Career Center. So,
Oh, I didn't know that one. I
yeah.
know about the museums.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All sorts of good stuff. Thank you for giving us that
Backpacks.
shout out, Brian. Tell everyone, because I want people to know about the ski
just did.
passes. Yeah, good, right.
So the biggest driver is personnel,
Yeah.
and most of that is based upon the COLA and the increase in minimum wage.
And the step
and the
increases, yeah.
Step increases, okay. Any questions for Dana? Thank you, Dana.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I think we already did that, right?
The capital budget goes before infrastructure, so, yep.
You mean first before it comes to us?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
We're-
Not ready to discuss it
No,
yet.
we're all,
So we gave a brief overview
Yeah.
of it, and we can get into more detail at the next meeting.
Mhm.
Chief?
So line item 448.
We collect hypodermic needles, drugs, guns, and why not books? Something a little bit of a change of pace for us.
Page 11.
so I have to go to the police office to pay my fines now, when I don't turn my books in on time?
Yeah, people pay parking fines, pick up their cars, whatever. All purpose.
Usually I'm really pretty glad to donate to the library.
When people ask us if what our hours are, we're just open, like all the time. Anyway, our budget increase, the bottom line is $44,898. That's a 2.7% increase. The big driver on that is obviously salaries with the union contract. Most of that falls in the patrol division. Obviously, most of the employees are there. Patrol alone accounts for 2.4% of that increase. The rest of the budget is only 0.3% increase. We offset the increase in salaries by a number of reductions in service contracts, renegotiated them, got rid of some. We knocked some other prices down. Heating fuel for the police station has been drastically reduced with natural gas. There's just been a lot of other little things we've done that have brought that down a little bit. The only thing we're looking at now is actually more affect this budget year is keeping our parking ticket person on the road through the winter just to deal with the issues we're having downtown. Typically, this is her last week, and she goes away until May. But we do have sufficient money in this year's budget. I think it would maybe overexpend it by about $2,000, but the value we're getting by having a liaison and somebody on the street down there dealing with parking issues, directing people around, interacting with Kubricki and some of the contractors has been beneficial for us, and I know certainly beneficial for the people downtown. So that's this budget year.
Is that gonna go through Christmas, or
Yeah, I'd like to keep it there right through the winter.
right through winter?
Yeah, typically the next few days is when she's done
Yeah.
until May. But we're looking at, she's very busy downtown. We've had some issues with some of the contractors down there, working with Kubricki, working with Jim, some of the parking issues and traffic patterns and movements downtown. She's been a real key person in trying to take care of those things for us, and I really would like to keep her there. I think it benefits us, even though typically we're not budgeted for that, but we have sufficient money in that budget to cover most of that at any rate. And I'm just wondering if V-Trans would want to kick in a little money.
That's what I'm thinking.
To help us,
Maybe we should go, if it's bringing value and we can point to it being project-related, that might be something we can ask.
Yeah, I think if you ask anybody downtown in the businesses, they would say it's definitely been a value to them because she's there on the ground with them all the time. She interacts with me on a daily basis. She works with Kubricki, she works with Jim, and we're just trying to keep things as best we can moving downtown.
I definitely support that, and I would love to see that year-round, actually, that position, because I see that very value. I don't know.
Typically, we've never done it in the winter because on a typical winter, it's not that busy downtown. We don't have as much going on in terms of activity. Parking is not really a problem in January, February, March, so we always, just for budget reasons, usually went from May through the end of October and a little bit around Christmas time. But that's something we can certainly review. But I think this particular summer coming in, this spring and summer and over the winter this year, it's going to be critical that we maintain that contact down there, especially with us having 3 people that are out injured and we're a little shorthanded as it is.
So we are talking about continuing right through, not just ending after the winter, but like.
Right, but that's this budget year and not
For
really
this
the
budget
proposal
year,
that we're
yes.
getting, just to get us through
I
here.
understand what you're saying. It could be a different picture.
Because it will run a little bit of an over expenditure when we get toward the end of this current fiscal year, but it won't be that much.
She's been tremendous, and I hear that not just from the people or the merchants downtown and construction, but I actually even had somebody come up to me and who received a ticket and said they understood why, and they wouldn't make that mistake again. I think, and so just that awareness of what's going on. Plus, she just has a great presence of the town down there. So, no, I can't say enough good about what I've heard about her and what I've observed with her. So, I would support keeping her on.
Anyway, we're in good shape with our budget so far this fiscal year going on, so I don't look at this as going to be catastrophic to the budget to do this. But looking at this budget for next year, we're just back to a normal year, starting in July. She's going to be here anyways as part of the package that she's here. So our increase is fairly modest when you look at the amount of staff we have, the full-timers with the union contract and what they got for increases. We were able to kind of dull the impact of that a little bit with some other reconfiguring service contracts and some other cuts and things we made in other parts of the budget.
You have any words of wisdom how you knocked so much out of your service contracts?
We looked at them and just kind of look at the value of these things to see if they're worth it, number one. And two, just generally call the vendor and say, we're going to change things. I was here a few weeks ago to deal with one with the tasers. We looked and got a better deal with them, and were able to cut some money out of this budget for the taser service contract and carried that forward for the next few years.
Yeah.
You know, we just keep an eye on these things, something we have some control over, so.
Excellent. That's real money that you were able to save to offset some of the additions of the personnel budget.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions of Chief?
Well, the only thing I know we've been looking at is the K-9 program. It's just a small wedge, but, I know we're continuing to just watch that and see.
It's a little dormant now as the canine handler
I
just
know.
had surgery a few weeks ago, so he'll be back in the spring, we hope, full bath. So that'll get going again. You should all have this. This is a little kind of cheat sheet we make, which if you want to see how we spend every penny of the budget, it's pretty much in this, what it costs us for this and that. There are some older figures that I didn't update as far as what it costs to get a lawn mowed and things like that, but the totals are accurate. And I'm certainly entertain any questions as we go down the road the next few weeks. If anybody sees something,
Okay.
just give me a call and I can fill you in on it.
This is a first blush for us. So.
Sure, sure. And you may have questions, so happy to answer them.
You playing any place over the holidays, Chief?
No, we're just taking a little break.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Would have enjoyed a little Irish music here, so.
We'll be at Two Brothers on the 14th of January, I think, or the
All
13th.
right.
So there we are.
14th of January, that's our budget public meeting.
Oh,
Chief.
really? Oh,
So
shucks.
any questions on the budget, we'll get to the chief in advance
I don't know,
of
it's-
January
it-
14th.
He's got to walk across the
Just
street.
run over?
We got to take a break now. I've got to be,
I don't know, but I just saw
I don't
the
know the
smile of
date.
everybody who's Irish in this joint.
it's that week on a Saturday or Friday or something.
Thanks, Chief.
All right.
Chief Shaw.
Page 14.
So we had a few small changes, a couple of reductions in some budgets, the photographic supplies, the mileage reimbursement. There's a reduction in the equipment repair fund, an increase in station services for Kings Row and 5 Seymour Street, for an overall budget reduction of $7,116.
Another hero.
We try our best. We pitched a penny bad. You don't want to be a vendor with us, I can tell you. And the trick is never sign a contract for longer than 3 years,
Yeah.
ever.
Okay, that's that wisdom. Thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Questions of chief?
No, I think we're doing a good job of
Can you question
rotating. Yeah.
Why isn't it an $8,500 salary?
We'll try harder, Brian, I get it.
I feel sorry for the next vendor.
Exactly. A footnote is that we have put together our truck replacement committee. It starts actually tomorrow. They have their first meeting, and we'll be in front of you in November with a recommended vendor, in November of next year, with a hopefully a delivery date in September.
Which one is that?
Engine 1, the oldest one.
And that's, we pushed that back?
5 years.
Yeah.
Pushed those back 5 years. Yeah.
Well, certainly the methodology you guys developed for the ladder truck worked really well.
Yeah, actually,
That was a great model.
it's interesting to say that. We had 5 other fire departments in New England call and ask about how that worked and looked for the process, and Jeff shared his process with those 5 other departments, so.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, worked out well.
Where's our fund balance right now?
I don't have that in front of me.
Well, it's down after our last expense for the ladder truck.
Right, no, I
It'll,
think we had
Right
projected it
now,
was gonna cover
it's-
this.
it will cover the
Yep.
next purchase.
Yeah,
Yes, so the 25-year plan I put together, if it stays on put, will cover all those purchases.
that's what I thought,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
2 cents on the tax rate is about $190,000 a year.
Those aren't cheap trucks.
No, they're not. I wish they were, but they're not.
Well,
Well-
I think the other thing you did too with this ladder truck was an example is maybe we spent a little bit more, but we got one that's gonna last longer,
Yeah.
I mean, more durable.
Yeah.
Which going back to the issue of, other aspects of energy savings and the green aspect is if you build something that lasts longer, then that's
Have to
more
do
green.
it less. Exactly. Exactly.
So that's admirable.
Okay, I don't think there's any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
I think Kathleen's
You
gonna
know-
cover Public Works.
Skip over me and head to Dustin
Dustin.
instead.
Come back
Just
to
wanted
that.
to note, as the board has mentioned and noticed, both police, fire, recreation, and highway, public works have done a fantastic job pinching every penny with service contracts and looking at supply expenses. Other than an increase in the equipment fund, Dustin is presenting you essentially a flat budget as well. Go
Thank you,
ahead, Dustin.
Kathleen. I'm going to start on the fund side, revenue.
Okay, tell us what page you're on.
I know
It's
it's
line
line
item
67.
67, page 2.
Okay.
So as you'll see, we're projecting our revenue to remain flat. It's going to be an increase of $100 for an even $250,000 projection. Within that budget, most of the changes are to reflect the recent trends of the programs we offer in the categories of instructional programs, drop-ins, special events, and facility rentals. Typically, where you see a significant reduction in revenue, which to me I consider to be $1,000 or more, is because the instructor has either decided to offer fewer sessions or eliminated the program completely. When we lose a program, we look to replace it as quickly as possible, but we obviously cannot account for that in the budget until we have a program in place and are collecting fees for that program. Major drivers for the reduction of revenue in this budget include fewer weeks of tennis camp being offered, which is reflected in line 74. The loss of our STEAM and fitness programs, which are lines 84 and 104. And the reduction of sessions offered within our dance program, which is line 85. On the other end, major drivers for increases in revenue include additional weeks of Camp Cucamonga, which is line 81.
Thank you.
Increased popularity in our outdoor educational programming, which is line 89. Increased revenues at the pool, which is line 111. And continued growth in facility rentals, which is line 119. So I'll take any questions on the revenue side if you guys have any.
Have you considered the rental rates and reviewed them?
That is something that we're researching. We're looking at a lot of the different rec departments around the state to see what they offer. Because I know it's a really sweet deal that we offer right now, but we also don't want to price families out of being able to rent the facility for birthday parties and other occasions.
So you just started the study of that?
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, we're in the process.
And so far, it looks like you're on par, or?
We're a little bit lower than the major cities and about the same with other rural communities. So.
Okay, I would call that on par.
Yep.
Ish.
A big jump in the pool. What do you think the factors are there?
I think people are just noticing all the work that we've been putting into it. You can see that we keep increasing the seasonal passes, so people are coming there and they want to come back and they're purchasing passes, and it's going to be nice. I think we'll continue to see our usership rise and our expenditures and capital improvement funds decrease on that relatively soon. So.
Oh, that's excellent, because it seemed like for a while it wasn't getting used, but
Yep.
I see a tremendous
Definitely has had a resurgence.
resurgence. That's
Yep.
excellent.
Dustin, do you see any programming related to the new pavilion?
We got the pavilion right at the end of the fall, so we haven't really had the weather to really dive into that yet. We will probably rent it out for some birthday parties and things like that as well. We're thinking about using it for the festival on the green this year, which is relocating to Rec Park because of the bridge constructions.
Yeah.
But once again, we'll continue to look at other departments around the state and see kind of what they do and take guidance from them.
Bocce.
Any other revenue questions? All right, moving on to expenditures, which starts on line 826.
That's page 20.
So taking a look at the macro level, we're projecting a 1.2% increase in expenditures, which equates to $5,866 in additional spending for a total projection of $495,929. In administration, you'll see an increase in the bottom line of $44,000. That was just me trying to slip a raise in there without you guys catching on.
Yeah, it worked.
You didn't go by Chief Hanley and Chief Shaw, did you?
No. So, in seriousness, what you see in line 846, 34,200 of that is because we're restructuring the budget so that all of our full and part-time wages are in that same area. Lines 828 and 829 have been shifted from other sections of the budget, so essentially the true net increase in admin cost is $10,509. And that money accounts for cost of living and step increases like other departments have mentioned. Moving on to instructional programs, which is line 890. The decrease in expenditures is attributed to major drivers on the revenue side, meaning that we are making less revenue from the programs like dance and the other programs we've mentioned, but on the flip side, we don't have to pay out as much to instructors, because I'm sure as most of you are aware, all of our programs are set up as a 70-30 split between, our instructors keep 70% of what they make and we keep the other 30%. So if we're getting less revenue, we're also paying out less to our instructors.
And so, Dustin, you had recently reviewed that split and increased or decreased the instructor.
Right, we were
portion.
at an 80-20 split as of last year. This year, we went down to a 75-25 split, and this coming fiscal year will be at 70-30, which more closely aligns with what we see around the state. You'll see the increase in day camp expenditures, which is line 10, and that's just to account for the additional weeks of camp we're offering, as well as a rise in the minimum wage that we'll have to pay our starting employees. Moving on to line 92, pool and aquatics. That is also due to wage increases for seasonal employees, as well as higher projections for both the supplies and other services, just kind of following a 3-year trend. So just more accurately reflecting the actual spending over time. And then moving on to maintenance of facilities, which is line 1012. Line 1004, under supplies, that's an increase that also shows a more accurate reflection of spending over time. Line 1006, other services and charges, that is a decrease that reflects a reduction in the amount of time paid to contractors for cleaning the rec center. We're in the process of studying some efficiencies and using in-house staff where we can increase or decrease that line item. Line 1008 is rubbish removal, and that increase shows the correction from Casella's part on the cost to lease the zero-sort trash receptacles you see around town. We are currently researching other methods available to us to reduce that cost if possible. And line 1010, the transfer to equipment fund, that increase is based on scheduled replacement of the Parks and Recreation truck on a 5-year cycle. And then just the final note I have is that we have combined the parks maintenance line, which is 1020, and the downtown parks program, which is line 1031, into one area. So the increases and decreases you see in those associated line items are just in correlation of moving those funds around to the correct line items. And the reason that was done is because there's not really a downtown parks program anymore. We just include it as an all-encompassing as part of the park maintenance now.
Wait a minute, what did you say?
So if you look at
1031?
Lines 1022 and 1031. So essentially all of the line items that equated to line 1031 have moved up into line 1022 now.
29,
1022.
10.
So it's essentially just combining the downtown parks program and the parks maintenance budgets.
Okay, so, portalets that are added, where does that get budgeted? Is that in this?
That it would be in other services and charges in maintenance of facilities.
What line item is that?
That would be,
1027?
yes, 1027.
1027. So do we have enough there? If we add a portalet?
We're actually in the process of building a second restroom at the warming hut that will be available for outside use. And we also put a porta potty at Rec Park and at Harold Curtis and at Jack Brown, which is being used a lot more for baseball and softball activities. We haven't heard of a higher need, but.
Well, in the town green area, maybe, so. Like, what would the budget impact be of adding another one?
We pay about $100 a month per porta potty.
I'm just wondering if we should consider that addition to the budget.
And I mean, I think that's something that we could fit into the current budget as presented if we needed to.
So the current budget includes the extra portalet that you already have at the rec center, but would go away when you add this second bathroom, so we don't really need to add it to the budget because you already have it in here,
Yep.
kind of?
So we
Just be
would
shifting its location.
Exactly. We would move it from the rec park to a different location if needed. So.
I think that's more than just a budget issue. It's like a public policy issue. So it's good to know that we have that money available if needed. But it's something we should tackle
Yeah.
as a group.
That's a bigger discussion.
Well, that's what this is about.
So the restroom at the teen center, the outdoor, it'll be open all the time? It won't be locked? Okay.
We're still trying to
Or-
grapple with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't want to go on the record saying yes or no.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
So your total increase is 5866?
Yep.
He must have found some savings in vendors as well.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to figure out is electricity, 10,003.
Which
Yes.
item?
You
Because
guys are tough. You're all sitting together, too.
yeah, in a new sound system, we don't have the bug we used to have up there.
What line item, Nick, are you
This
looking
would
at?
be 10,003, Kathleen, and I know still, may still be in the process of kind of learning buildings, but going back to 2018, budget 3,500, and the actual was higher than that, so sort of adjustments along the way, but then it jumps up to the 14,000, and then this year it's down to 12, but it doesn't seem like we're spending anywhere near that, are we?
Okay, I'll take a look at the detail and the actual bills,
Just curious.
try to reconcile that.
Yeah, there wasn't another line that might have gotten consolidated with that.
That's what I'm kind of thinking, maybe the story, but I was just kind of. It was on the.
It's about electricity.
So the electricity from the warming hut, the pool house and rec center have all been combined into one.
Okay, that explains it. Okay.
In the maintenance of facilities. And we'll continue to monitor the individual energy usage through the statements that the accounting office sent out monthly.
Okay, that makes perfectly good sense, thanks. Okay,
But
now I
you-
got,
Wait a minute, though, you have listed electric for the warming hut.
Yeah, but it's blank for the budget of 2021.
Oh, okay.
Historicals there. but-
yeah,
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Why do it that way? How, don't you want to see for each building?
That's how we're gonna monitor the statements.
Mhm.
Something that would be happening this year, just, as you can see, there's a lot of line items as there is.
Mhm. Mhm.
I do sense for our level budget, we don't necessarily, I mean, it started getting broken out finer and finer and finer. And really, when you look at it at our level of overview, I don't know as though we need Dustin to tell us his archery costs and revenue. And so I'm very supportive of having you be responsible to watch over those individual line items, but I don't think the select board necessarily needs to watch over every particular line item.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, and when you do the check reviews, you see that.
I know. No, but I'm looking for trends, especially with new buildings, and I think that's why, I do like to see how the rec center is performing. That's all.
Yeah, no, I get that. But we've got, 6 pages of rec center and it's, so, okay, thank you. Did you want to go back to Public
Sure.
Works?
Public Works, very briefly, since Bill is not here, but I will give you a really high-level overview. The Public Works budget is up $62,329, which is a 3.7% increase. The lion's share of that, $59,758, is increases for the equipment fund. Basic replacement, operation, and maintenance. So only $2,000 increase on a $1.7 million budget. Like the other department heads we've spoke to, Bill worked hard to consolidate salary items shave expenses in other contracted services and supplies. One initiative he has this year is to take 2 seasonal full-time positions and combine it to make 1 full-time position, which he will be presenting to the Personnel Committee before your next meeting. As part of the increase in the equipment fund, $46,000 is what we discussed with the board as a phased increase year over year to get that fund up to a sustainable level for the highway department replacements. You may want to look at that if you're looking at a place to shave, but we started off with a 5-year, $46,000 per year increase to increase the sustainability of that fund, and that this budget reflects that increase. So we'll have Bill available at the budget public hearing to go over this in detail with you if you'd like, if you have any questions. And also planning to do a deeper dive into the equipment fund, since that does play a major role in the general fund.
I'm still absorbing it.
Excuse me?
I'm still absorbing it.
Yes.
Oof. Look at our salt expense already.
We buy a lot up
Oh,
front.
I forgot that, yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And we hope it's enough.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky we had a little reprieve there to help make up for the early salt we had to put down.
So I'll just point out, no need to go into them in any detail. Major drivers breakdown is in your packet if you want to take a look at that. And also, I did a summary of bond payments and a bond forecast, considering that we're looking at a couple of bonds coming up this year. The flood resiliency, $500,000 for 20 years, and also the adaptive storage reuse plan for the old wastewater treatment facility, $1 million bond for that, which will be, that $1 million isn't finalized yet, but that's our projection at this point. So those would be on top of our existing debt service, and the payments on the existing bonds are shown here.
So what's our schedule? So our next meeting in January, we have our public hearing on the budget.
Yes.
And we have to finalize it by the end of January for town meeting warning, correct?
So in the past, depending on how the budget hearing goes, you have had a third meeting in January, that 21st meeting, if there are a lot of questions, a lot of work still to be done on the budget. So mark your calendar with a pencil.
It's a lot of good preparation. Thank you.
And where's our budget surplus standing right now?
We just received the audit report today, so we'll be taking a look at that and reporting in. The tax rate increase that I gave you does include a $150,000 surplus, which we are anticipating being available to us.
Okay. Any questions of Kathleen or any of the department heads that are here? Okay. I do thank you all for working so hard to try to drive down some of those variable expenses, given that a lot of our expenses are contractual in nature and have step increases, cost of living, and other increases. You've done significant work to help us try to continue to maintain an acceptable tax rate, so appreciate it.
Thank you for being here late too, to meet with us.
So, we need to do a public hearing on our budget presentation, and the recommendation is we warn it for January 14th.
So I'll move to warn a public hearing to take testimony on the draft FY 21 general fund budget during the select board's regular meeting Tuesday, January 14th, 2020.
Second. Moved and seconded. Is everybody going to be able to be here?
I will be calling in.
All in? Okay. All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Kathleen's going to walk us through a first draft of the town meeting warning.
So I did a hybrid of the warning. This is more like an agenda that I do at the end of the budget, end of our town meeting prep work. But given the input after last year's town meeting, where each select board member wanted to participate in the presentation, I took a swing at where people might participate and included it in this draft warning. So we can go through that. Article 1, to act on reports of the town officers. Usually Brian kicks off with a welcome, a review of the previous year, and coming highlights of 2020. Dedication of the town report by Victor. A thank you to departing board members and staff, Farhad. Article 2. Last year, we had a separate article for the Cross Street Bridge Fund, and as we did in the previous year. What I'm suggesting this year is that we combine that with Article 4, which is the general fund budget, as that's really our whole. That is a package that we present to the voters, and the tax rate is contingent on that allocation of funds. I think we've been very transparent about where the funds are coming from, and suggesting that perhaps this is the year to consolidate that into one article. Article 3.
Be in the budget article.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Article 3 is our usual equipment fund borrowing. The Infrastructure Committee looked at this schedule of equipment and have asked for some more detail on what the loans are going to look like and what reserves, if any, we have, and how the operating budget fits with this schedule of equipment, but generally was supportive. During Bill's presentation, he outlined several changes he made to last year's replacement schedule that net out over $1 million in savings over 20 years. So that was well received. Article 4, as I mentioned, the usual budget article that calls out the amount of the surplus to be used from the Cross Street Bridge Fund, as proposed here. With Nick, who last year came forward with some suggestions about the presentation of the Cross Street Bridge Fund. We have rewarded him with letting him take the lead on that. Heather, who always does a fantastic job with the capital budget, me with a breakdown of the general fund budget with the department heads standing by. Didn't mention, I hoped that Lindsay would help out with the equipment fund article. Then Article 5, suggesting here 2 tax installments as we did this year, given that the downtown will be in construction next summer. We thought that it would be good to stay with 2 tax collection times, one in October and one in March.
Did that go, has that gone fine so far?
It's going really well, actually.
Yeah.
There have been some people that haven't been happy with it, but we've reached out, we've encouraged them to do monthly payments.
Okay.
But the way where it makes our workflow
Mm-hmm.
is substantially.
Was it
Okay.
more of an individual discipline thing than anything? Yeah.
That's great.
There's so many people with escrows,
Right.
and that's a huge majority now, and they don't even, so they don't see it at all.
Yeah.
And this is our annual delinquent tax collection penalties and fines article. And then Article 7, other business. This is where the candidates for office introduce themselves, town meeting poll, if there is one.
Like the Doyle poll, we have the assembly poll. I like that.
Water system bond vote, flood resiliency bond vote, and the police department storage bond vote will be information pieces there. So for voting by Australian ballot, we talked about the water system improvements, $2 million, which is currently under review by the Infrastructure Committee. At the last Infrastructure Committee, Dan Werner outlined a proposal to phase the Court Street, Court Square, and Washington Street water system replacement project over 3 years and finance $1 million with the water capital budget funds that will be coming in each year and $1 million from the Cross Street Bridge Fund, which would not require bonding.
Is that work that is not done in the roadway there?
That's done in anticipation of the paving project that's coming up the following year.
Right, but maybe I'm misunderstanding, because it's talking about doing it over the project
Right.
over 3 years.
Breaking the project into 3 distinct parts, bridging different fiscal years. So this is a project that will take.
But it would still be done in time for the
Yeah.
paving?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought we were.
There's
trying to get
certain
that.
portions of this, the Washington Street portion of it is not going to be impacted by that
Oh,
paving.
okay. Tracking you now.
And then a long article explaining the flood resiliency project, the different components of that. Right now, we're working to verify that we have secured funding from FEMA in the amount of $500,000 toward the $2 million project.
Is that in question? I thought we had that.
There has been a change of staff at FEMA, and they have been carefully scrutinizing the project to make sure it meets their benefit cost ratios. Just heard from Amy Sheldon today that she had been looking at the benefit cost ratios and found that they had excluded the cost of the replacement of the Lower Plains Bridge, which she had submitted as part of our overall cost analysis for what the damages have been over the years. So she's hopeful that that will bring the ratio back into line with their funding criteria. And then finally, the adaptive reuse project, $1 million bond.
Are you looking for people to present on each of these articles? It's still thinking about that, or?
On Article 8, 9, and 10, not Article 8, 7, and 8.
Right.
Yes, if we have any volunteers, I'd be happy to work with them on presentations.
Okay.
I probably could take a water one.
Okay.
Unless someone else has some burning desire.
No, I think you should take the water one.
Yeah.
You are the water one.
I could also do the adaptive reuse too, but maybe Lindsay would.
You have to say that.
That would be a good place for
Oh,
Lindsay
thanks.
to.
I don't mind doing it if
Nobody
nobody else wants it.
You've been a part of
If
that.
it's, if we're gonna broadcast this conversation to the whole town, then yes,
It's
I
actually
will.
already been
I know,
broadcast.
that's what I'm saying.
And as we're fortunate that Amy Sheldon is a Middlebury voter, perhaps she'll help us out with the flood resiliency project.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Well organized, as always.
So our addition was 15A or 15B?
I think Jackie's straight up 15, and then we added 15A as the
Okay.
errors and omissions.
Straight up 15.
Okay, you're on.
So the application for the water system improvement is the final million from the 3 that was approved in 2010. The nature of some of the pricing on those projects, you know, stretched it out further than what we couldn't borrow it all and hold the money, so we have narrowed it down, and we are finally attacking that last million that's already been spent, so.
It's already been spent?
Already been spent, so this will be recouping, you know,
Money into the checkbook.
That's right. So,
Questions?
looking back, I looked at all the projects, and we've done a lot. And we've forgotten a lot of the projects that we've done, or I had, I'm sure, you know, so it's,
Speaks well that we didn't need to bond that quickly and that we were able to
let the
cash
rates
flow
go
that.
down, a little. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's pushing 12 years ago or excuse me, 10 years ago that was, you know, originally approved, so.
Yeah. We're gonna need that money back in the checkbook as we attack these other projects. That's why you're
And that's
coming at us, right?
cleaning it up, yeah.
Yeah, figured as much.
We had that authorization, and
I'll make a motion to authorize the submission of the bond application with the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank for the final 1 million of the 3 million in bonds originally authorized by the Middlebury voters in 2010 to fund various water system improvements.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Thank you. Okay, item 15A. There was a list that's in your packet. And in accordance with VSA 32, Section 4261, when real or personal estate is omitted from the grand list by mistake or an obvious error is found, the listers, with the approval of the Select Board, may supply such omissions or correct such errors to the grand list. Acting Assessor Allison Joseph has provided a list of 2019 grand list errors and omissions, and the board's approval is now requested in order to correct the grand list as noted. I'll note that if approved, the value of the municipal grand list would increase by $5,926,220. And the detailed list is with this information.
I'll move to approve the 2019 grand list errors and omissions report as you presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next, just a quick overview on the town college lunch. In your packet, there was our agenda that we did. That was an opportunity for us to address with the college and for them to review with us ongoing issues of mutual concern and that we're working together on. Top on that list was Energy 2028, and they reviewed with us where they are with the Goodrich Digester project, and are hoping that that will be coming online later next year, and that's well under construction now. With that and their biomass plant that they already have, and if they can achieve some of their usage reductions, they should be fully renewable on thermal energy. Their efforts to be fully renewable in the electric side is needing a lot of additional work, and this 5 megawatt solar project that we just recently supported is a big part of making some significant strides in that effort. We talked at length about the project, the process they had been through, and the concerns of our community, and how that could be made a better project without totally shutting everything down and going back to square one. And so I think we're all kind of aware where that went. They talked a little bit about their interest in collaborating with the community to have a more robust child care solution, and that's an ongoing effort. And there was one other, I just spaced it again, as far as other updates.
Homelessness. Did you discuss homelessness?
And
Talked
what
about
am I forgetting?
We did talk about it briefly.
Briefly.
Which one?
Yeah.
Homelessness.
We updated them mostly on the conversations we were having, including the importance of getting a screener.
They mentioned the importance to them, I think, of having somewhere local to detox.
Oh, right.
And
Yes.
wanting,
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
wanting to support in maybe the consideration of a facility where that could happen. So there was some discussion
Okay.
Yeah.
and support about that.
Talked about housing also.
Yep.
Right, so, and then in our packet is a list of the things with the brief that we updated them on.
there any discussion about them, what, if they're considering at all, maybe some shifts in work schedule in
Yes,
some of the departments during the
did.
project? Okay.
Laura actually broached that with them, and I think that's early process right now. Yes, there was some discussion about things that they could do to be looking at to reduce traffic during those prime times.
Okay.
So,
Good, thanks.
So next is, I guess we're ready for the approval of the check warrants, Nick.
Guess it's me, okay. Reviewed the check warrants, and I move to approve the total expenditure in the amount of $471,105.29, consisting of all of that for accounts payable for the period of December 11th through December 17th, 2019.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Can I jump in with a quick, maybe at the end of the month, that we get a mini run of checks, maybe we get a majority come in? I just see a big backlog.
Just send us an email.
Heads up that it's coming.
I think we're all around for the holidays, so.
Yeah, if you need someone to come in and review, I think I'm up next, but I can come in, just give me a heads up.
Kathleen?
Just to note that, other than holiday cards, the only thing that we've received is the Middlebury Resource Recovery Center's petition for a certificate of public good with the Vermont Public Utility Commission for the proposed food-to-waste digester project on Industrial Avenue. Attachments include pre-file testimony from Eric Fitch and all accompanying exhibits.
Thank you.
And that's available in my office.
Board member concerns, Farhad?
I'm good.
You're good? Laura?
I'm really impressed at how our legislators have followed up with Chief Hanley about the homelessness situation and the need for the screener. And we saw in the Addison Independent Monday issue one of those follow-ups. So I know that the chief is pleased with that, and that we will be talking about it again at the upcoming Public Health and Safety Committee meeting in January, which we decided to schedule for the end of the month, January 27th, Kathleen, because our rotation of usually the third Monday of the month happens to hit the holiday, so we thought that would be better. So just saying that's coming, and we'll be inviting people who have been active in that dialogue to that meeting to continue the discussion about what we're gonna do. So I just wanted to let the rest of the board know that I had that conversation with the chief. I've also been working on organizing a cleanup of the banks. So we've had some encampment because the charter house is full and people do seek a place to go in our woods along our banks, both along Happy Trail, along the Marble Works, and in Wright Park. So I've just been continuing to work on that too, so that we are just aware and we tidy it up, and also know that it's just something that's probably going to recur, and it's just something we'll continue to monitor. There was an interesting article on radio not too long ago about whether homeless people who can't get into a shelter have the right to sleep on public lands, and that's just something for us to tackle too and be aware of.
They probably do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so we do our best to just navigate it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Laura. Victor, nothing? Heather?
I just wanted to thank the Better Middlebury Partnership and Karen, Experience Middlebury, all that. I really enjoyed the Very Merry Middlebury last Thursday night, and I was really, really impressed to see several of you downtown Nick and Brian and Laura for sure. And I was just encouraged by the number of people out shopping. I always wonder how the second night is going to go, but there was a line to get your $10 of Middlebury money for spending 25. So anyway, I think it really encourages people to come downtown and shop, and so anyway.
It was fun too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
a great time.
Nick?
You said that this is the last meeting of the decade.
I never know which, the decade start on the 0 year or?
Well,
It is, right?
I guess it is. Victor, do you remember the first meeting of the decade?
The first meeting of the decade?
Yeah, it's like it was just yesterday.
Yeah, it's trying.
I know I was not quite as blonde, or more blonde than I used to be. But anyway, it is the last
Mine
time.
was red.
Yeah. It is the last meeting of the year, and, first of all, I want to thank Kathleen and our department heads and all of our staff for the outstanding work they've continued to do for us this year. I think as personally, as a board member, it does make life a lot easier knowing that we have everything being done so well, so thank you, and
I would
make it a great holiday. Certainly, it continues to be a pleasure serving with all of you, and it's and you have a group who all understands what this is like. So thanks, and make it a good holiday to all of you, and certainly to everybody in the town, whatever your faith is. Make it a season of joy and happiness and peace, and spend it with your friends and family, and just make it a good time of year. So, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, happy just good time.
I was recently roped into a little project that the teen center is doing. The youth there are trying to become the first town in Vermont to be certified, and I forget the exact terminology, but it's like a youth-friendly community, and there are different tasks they have to do to demonstrate that. But they're very excited about doing it, and I think at some point they'll probably come here looking for our support. But it's a really worthy project, and they do great work over there at the teen center. Cecilia has been a really great addition, and yeah, I look forward to hearing more about what they're doing.
So I just want to reiterate what Nick said. We're very, very fortunate to have the staff that we have, and I think the town recognizes that. And it's nice to be a part of a community that can work through disagreements in the manner that I think we've worked through things, different really challenging issues throughout the year. And so I celebrate a lot in this Christmas season for us, and give thanks to the hard work that so many people do to make the community of Middlebury a wonderful place to live, and raise a family, and enjoy the times downtown and around the community. So we will have a few weeks where we can spend time with our families and not have to come to a meeting, and I hope you enjoy it. We do have one last item, and we need to go into executive session for that.
Let me take us in. In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of contracts correctly, or
Contracts,
and personnel matters.
personnel, and legal.
And legal, okay. So pending contracts, personnel, and legal would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy if it discusses the contracts, personnel, and legal in public.
Second.
We got to vote.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I further move that the board enter into executive session to discuss personnel, contracts, and legal under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 9:05. 9:05, we're going into executive session.